Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فكذب وعصى ثم أدبر يسعى فحشر فنادى فقال أنا ربكم الأعلى. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. Today, as my second topic throughout the few days of Muharram al-Haram, as we know, today is the 2nd of Muharram. And the main topic would be the biography of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And I'm going to split the biography into a few topics. The first topic that we'll be covering today is the birth of the Imam and Imam's relationship with his grandfather Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The third part of the topic would be the event of Mubahila. Then it would be the Imam's relationship with his father, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Then it would be obedience to parents. Then it would be Imam's marriages and his children. Then after that, it would be Imam Hussein's generosity and his knowledge when it came to outside of Karbala. So we'll be starting off with the birth of the Imam and the Imam's relationship with his father. As we know, Imam Hussain ibn Ali, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, was born on the 3rd of Sha'ban in the 4th year after Hijrah. And he died on the 10th of Muharram in the 61st year after Hijrah. Imam Ali alayhi salam and Bibi Fatima al-Zahra, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhima, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, when they married each other, they had 4 children. They had a 5th child, which was a miscarried child, which was by the name of Muhsin. But the 4 other children were who? They were Imam Hassan, Imam Hussain, Sayyidah Zainab, and Kulthum. And you find that Bibi Fatima al-Zahra, when she gave birth to Imam Hassan, 52 days later, she knew that she was pregnant again with Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And the narration tells us when it came to the birth of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, there was a sense of happiness and there was a sense of pride and joy around the whole family. Because when a child is to be born, the whole family is happy, there's pride and joy. However, when it came to the time of the birth of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, there was mixed feelings. The narrations say that there were mixed feelings. There was sadness, there wasn't really much happiness. Even though that there were a new child and a new flower of Rasulullah was to be born. But there was lots of sadness around the birth. Why? Because there was a sense that this child's life will end and it will be full of sadness. The first to comment on this was who? The first to comment on this was al-Fadl, the wife of Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet. She had a dream. And the dream was, then she told Rasulullah, "Oh Rasulullah, I had a strange dream last night." And the Prophet said, "What was your dream?" She said, "I had a dream that I had a piece of your flesh in my lap." So the Prophet Muhammad said, "Glad tidings, Fatima al-Zahra will give birth and the child will be in your hands." So al-Fadl, the wife of Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet, was the first to comment on this. Then when it came to the birth of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, the Prophet Muhammad, he walked very slowly and he walked very heavily to the house of Fatima al-Zahra. The narrations say he was full of sadness and he walked very, very slowly to be Fatima's house. However, on the other side, when Imam Hassan was born, the Prophet Muhammad ran and was full of joy and pride and happiness because another flower, the first flower of Prophet Muhammad was to be born. So in one narration, we have Imam Hassan. Then the Prophet Muhammad came running to the house of Bibi Fatima. However, when it came to the birth of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, the Prophet Muhammad was very upset. He was very sad as he knew that an unjust group of people will kill Imam Hussain alayhi salam. So when he came to the house, when Prophet Muhammad came to the house, the Prophet Muhammad said, Asma, bring me my Hussain. So Asma, she brought Hussain to Imam Hussain, the Prophet Muhammad. Then when Prophet Muhammad, he held Imam Hussain in his hands, and then he began to cry. And then Asma said to Prophet Muhammad, O Prophet of God, why do you cry? As this is supposed to be a day of joy, a day of happiness. Because normally, as I said earlier, there's a sense of happiness. If somebody has a child, there's a sense of happiness and joy around them. However, for this individual child, the Prophet knew that his life would end with full of sadness. So the Prophet Muhammad held Imam Hussain, and then he said to Asma that this child will be killed by an unjust and a baghi group. He will be killed by an unjust group of people. And may Allah not grant them intercession for what they will do. But please do not tell Fatima Zahra, as she has just come out of labor. And I don't want her to hear this news. So then, at this time, Prophet Muhammad knew that this child's life will end with sadness. So now, there's a few other narrations that when it came to the naming of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam, there's 3 narrations. We accept one of them and we reject the other ones. But before I speak about that, there were a few ceremonies that I want to talk about. There was a few ceremonies that are lessons in our lives. If somebody has a child, then you should perform these ceremonies on them. The first ceremony was what? Is to recite azan in the right ear and iqama in the left. Why? Because this brings away the whispering of shaitan away from the child. As we see in the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas, malikin nas, ilahin nas, min sharril waswasil khannas. O Allah, I seek refuge for the whispering of shaitan. So adhan in the right ear and iqama in the left means that the whispering of shaitan will be away from the child. So the Prophet Muhammad recited adhan in the right ear and iqama in the left. Then 7 days later, what did he have? He had the aqiqah ceremony. People ask, what is the aqiqah ceremony? The aqiqah ceremony is when you shave the head of the child and the weight of his in silver is to be given out to the poor. And also a lamb or some people, a sheep is to be slaughtered and also given out to the poor. And a leg of mutton is supposed to be given to the midwife. What is this? I want you to focus on this point. Why we should give a leg, now in day and age, and that time they would give a leg of mutton to the midwife, because the midwife would help in this child's birth. She would help out with this, she would help out with these chores, with this, so the wife doesn't have to do the chores. So Prophet Muhammad then said, do not neglect her position. She has helped in the birth of this child. So the Prophet said, do not neglect her position. Then in that time, they would give a leg of mutton. Obviously now in this day and age, give them a box of chocolates or some flowers, offer us something, because we shouldn't neglect their position. And then there's a few narrations when it comes to the naming, as I mentioned earlier, there's a few narrations when it came to the naming of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. There are 3 narrations. We accept one of them, but we reject the others. What is the first narration? The first narration is that when Imam Hussain was born, when Imam Hassan was born, Imam Ali wanted to name him Harb. But what does it mean in English? War. Very amazing name to name your child. Imagine going up to your child and you say to them, Salaam alaikum, war. So the first narration is that Imam Ali wanted to name Imam Hassan Harb. Or let's just say, for instance, he wanted to name him War. Then Prophet Muhammad said, change his name from War to Hassan. So Imam changed his name from War to Hassan. Then when Imam Hussain was born, Imam Ali wanted to name him War. And then the Prophet Muhammad then said to Imam Ali, change his name from War to Hussain. And the third narration is when Muhsin was born, and the Prophet Muhammad held him. Imam Ali wanted to name him Harb. He wanted to name him War. Then the Prophet Muhammad said, change his name from Harb to Muhsin. Why do we reject these three hadiths? Number one, Muhsin was never born. Muhsin was a miscarried child of Fatima. Number two, if the Prophet Muhammad tells Imam not to do something once, he doesn't do it 3 times. And number three, there's no better name for Imam Ali to name his son than War. These are names of Jahiliyyah. And Jahiliyyah, they would name their sons Shaitan and Zalim and Taghi and Hakim. And these names of Jahiliyyah in the time of Jahiliyyah, they would name their sons these very pleasant names. These names they would name the child, as this was the time of Jahiliyyah. It was the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ who wanted to name Imam Hussain, Hussain. And there's a narration, as I mentioned yesterday, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain. Hassan and Hussain say the Shabab Ahl Jannah. They are the youth, they are the leaders of the youth of paradise. So now from that day on, when the Prophet Muhammad named Imam Hussain, they had a major connection with each other. Why? Because it has been proven that if the grandfather and the father are both living in the same house, the child learns more from the grandfather. This is a very important lesson. I want you to pay close attention to this. Because if you see some films in the media, there is this drunken old man who's always swearing the whole time and asleep in the night. The Prophet Muhammad, he didn't do that. What did he do? He would be kind to others. He would have warmth, humility, be generous to others. He would not talk to somebody in a rude manner. This is what the lesson that Prophet Muhammad is trying to teach us. And this is the lesson that he taught to his grandchildren. So Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain would always see the Prophet Muhammad being nice, generous, kind to everybody. However, there are some grandparents that are very stubborn, that are very hard-hearted, hard to talk to, not have much generosity. And then if the child sees this behavior, then they will learn and pick up from this behavior because they see as the grandfather more important than the father. So they would pick up these rude and stubborn manners from the grandfather. So this is why Prophet Muhammad taught us to be kind and generous to others. So what did Prophet Muhammad teach? He taught, be kind, warm, humble, and generous to everyone that he meets. So Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain, they would see their grandfather being warm and humble to others. And this is why the story where Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain salam, seen a man performing wudu. I'm sure you heard this story before. They seen a man performing wudu. And Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain could have easily went up to the person and they could have said, look at this man, he's 50, 60-year-old and he can't even do wuzu properly. He can't even practice his prayers properly. But no, they learned from Rasulullah to be warm, kind and generous to others. So what did Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain do? They went to the old man and the narration goes by saying, "Oh Sheikh, you are older than us. Can you see which one of us is doing wuzu right and which of us is doing wuzu wrong?" So the Shaykh then said, "O grandsons of Rasulullah, it would be my honor. Go ahead, perform the wuzu." When they were finished with performing the wuzu, the Shaykh then realized that it is not you who is doing wuzu wrong, it is me who is doing wuzu wrong. Look at the manners and the generosity of Imam Hussain. They could have easily went up to the person and they could have said, look at you, you're 50, 60, you can't even do wuzu properly. But no, they learned from Rasulullah to be nice and generous and kind-hearted to others. If it was us or if it was anybody else in the community doing wuzu wrong, then other people go up to him and say, oh, look at you, you're doing wuzu wrong, you can't do wuzu properly, you're 60, you can't do this, blah, blah, etc. But no, the Prophet teaches us, be warm, kind-hearted and generous to us. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Inshallah ta'ala, I will continue my lecture by talking about by summarizing the relationship with Imam Hussain and Prophet Muhammad, and then hopefully inshallah I will talk about tomorrow by the event of Mubahala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.